ready for it? Let's go. Coming in so hard on the beat like Bow Wow cornrows on a beat mic. Laced up to the top, about to take flight. Meet me at the rim? Yes, I keep it going. Yeah, I'm flowing like a prophet. I am chosen to fix this world that is broken. Here's a lesson, better note it. We all try to be civil. Hashtag shut up and dribble. Pledge allegiance to the flag while they emptied out the mag. Take a knee for the politics. Got them on the knees now, just suck it. Whoa, no homo. Don't choke, get it right, Tony Romo. Yeah, that was kinda raw, wasn't it? Finesse words all day for the fun of it. Nowadays, no one cares, cause this man can't say and get away with no punishment. But don't sit well with me. I lost change, but it's still incomplete. Gotta be more radical than Malcolm. Xing out all possible outcomes. Trump sparking, school's marksman. Got wall fires, that's sparking. Can't forget kids are starving, but they the only folks marching. How much longer will this linger? Stacking problems like Jenga. Issues pierce life with stingers. And I'm out, 2 fingers.
Good afternoon, everybody. What is going on? It is your boy Hollywood, and we are back. 2 Fingers is back. I know we've been gone for quite a while, but life just happens sometimes. Today we have a special show for you all. Today is going to be a Hardy and Sons episode today. So my co-host today is Gator, Mr. Gary Hardy. How you doing today, man?
What's going on, my family, my friends, my peoples? Hey, hey, hey.
I know, right? You sound like Bernie Mac over there. What's going on, America? And so, as I've told you, it's just going to be a Hardy and Sons. Siron is currently not going to be available today for the show. She actually I don't even know how we're going to do that one. I don't even know if we have one for that. But unfortunately, she had her wisdom teeth pulled, so she's down and out for the couch. Don't wish that upon nobody. But like I told you, we were kind of out for about 2 weeks now, and mostly because we've had a lot of people inquire and bring a lot of things to light, pretty much talking about the different things that's going on in society right now, dealing with Black Lives Matter and coronavirus, but mostly it's around the Black Lives Matter and more so Black Lives versus All Lives Matter movements. And so we really took our time delving into a couple ideas and did a lot of research to bring this special edition show to you all. So this show is going to be more of an educational show. We really want to educate a lot of people out there. We would like to thank and show gratitude to people who brought things to our attention or brought inquiries to us so we can better educate ourselves as well. So Hardy boy, you ready for it?
Yeah, let's go, man. Like you said, we really wanted to expand our horizons, both on both sides, educate the people as well as do the research, and we were educated as well. So yeah, this is a special edition.
All right, so like I said, we're headed to the chalkboard. So please get your pens, your notepads, get ready at your desk and be prepared. We're about to take y'all to school today. So while we were doing a lot of research, we came upon a gentleman by the name of Shawn Rochester. He actually presented a book in one of his presentations and speeches that he gave to, a couple of different universities and to the Google Corporation. The book is called Black Tax, and it really just dives into a deeper understanding of why African Americans today are at such a disadvantage, in society. Why do they feel so oppressed? Why are they at such a disadvantage in life trying to make it? I know a lot of people are always talking about, oh, well, this country wasn't built just solely on Black people's backs. People came over with absolutely nothing. What's the saying, Hardy, with the bootstraps?
Yeah, you work hard and you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But also, we left all part of that title, brother, is Black Tax, the cost of being Black in America. That says a lot.
Yes, sir. I was going to use that a little bit later, but I'm glad you brought it out. So, but yeah. And so one of the philosophies that he developed is this idea of PhD. And the idea of PhD is an acronym, and it stands for purchase, hire, and deposit. And I want you guys to just think about that a little bit right now. And just keep that in the back of your mind as we walk you along this journey that we're about to take. because it'll become more and more important as we get towards the end, and then we'll finally, explain it. But like I said, this is gonna be a journey. We're gonna be here for a little bit, so please do not grow impatient with us. Actually sit down, listen, and understand it fully, and then we will advise you to go actually check, these YouTube channels and these YouTube videos out, as well as, dive deeper into the book as well. We actually just purchased the book this past weekend and began reading it, and it's got some good stuff in there. So, Hardy Boy, you want to start with the beginning?
What is it? The slavery, 100% tax on the enslaved person's labor.
And slavery was between, let's keep it pretty much clear with America, 1619 to the emancipation in 1865, correct?
Right. And, it just identified what they call that, the net value. And,
right.
And how much it costs or what we generate. Again, we're talking about historical Black tax. So for all that hard labor from those, how many years is that? Like 150 years?
Well, from 1619 to 1865 is close to 250 years.
250 years, correction, 250 years. So the numbers came out, according to Mr. Rochester, to about effectively the rate of tax imposed on our Black people from that time period came out to about $50 trillion.
And this is 100% tax, slavery. So understand what tax means is that 100% tax means you're not making any profit, meaning anything you own, anything you have is not yours, including yourself. And I think that's a key when we talk about this 100% tax of slavery, is that anything you own, possess, you do, including yourself as a being, is not yours.
The Black man was property, literally. And anything he produced from his labor went to the owners. He had nothing.
And so with this in mind, Shawn Rochester brought a quote. He said, "It is difficult to solve a problem if people think the problem doesn't exist. Therefore, you are the problem."
Deep, real deep.
So within that slavery, let's talk about the worth of slaves. So my dad kind of gave you the value of slavery in those roughly 250 years. That was the value of slavery at that time. So in the year of 1860, let's start there. 1860, 4 million slaves were worth $22 trillion from 1860. In the year 1860, 1865. That was the worth of 4 million slaves throughout the entire South.
Is that today's money or less?
Right. Well, yeah, that's looking at, if you were to put a number on it from today's aspect, 4 million slaves during that time was $22 trillion.
Okay.
Now, if we look at the growth in our race's number, 45 million African Americans, those slaves were worth 15 times more than African Americans are today. All of us in the United States. African Americans today are $1.5 trillion.
So the net worth of 45 million African Americans today is worth $1.5 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
And the value of 4 million slaves in 1860 was $22 trillion. Are you kidding me? So 4 million, so that's like 40 plus million
right
difference in bodies and human beings working. Yep. And they generated that kind of income, $22 trillion, compared to the $1.5 trillion today with 45 million African Americans.
And understand what net worth means. Net worth means what you are worth, what your assets are, and your liquidity. That is all accumulated into net worth. And you're telling me 45 million African Americans today are only worth 1.5 trillion to the 4 million back in 1860s.
And I think the lesson today will define or break down why our value is equal or less than in today's society, as opposed to 150 plus years ago, when we would just grind. We had no ownership of our own labor or of our own selves. So this, I think, we will be able, as we go through this, you will be able to learn or see why 4 million slaves or Black people in the 1860s were able to generate, or their value was $22 trillion as opposed to the value of 45 million today.
So that's the economical implications that we kind of just brought to the table. So with that in mind, let's talk about it a little bit. So Abraham Lincoln, of course, established the Emancipation Proclamation, which set the slaves free, right? So with that being said,
so you saying, damn, I knew it was hard and I knew it was bad, but I did not know it was that bad. However, it did come to an end.
Right. So we're like, okay, the slaves were freed. Now we're moving on to the next phase. Now they can do something and go out into the world and make something of themselves. Well, with the war being ended, the Union took over the Confederates' land. But the idea was to redistribute the land they took from the Confederacy to those slaves, the newfound freed slaves. And the idea was called 40 acres and a mule, right? So 40 acres and a mule given to 4 million slaves, that's roughly 160 million acres. 160 million acres across the entire South. And an acre is worth about $3,000 to $6,000. But that never came into fruition. So if you do the math on that, that is about $1 trillion that was denied to the newfound freed slaves.
Right. About 90 billion a year.
So $1 trillion was denied to the slaves. And as my dad said, slavery during those 250 years was $50 trillion. They couldn't even get 2% of reparations back from that. $1 trillion. They just were denied that altogether. But however, the Union, who won, they can't just hold on to the land. So what they did was they redistributed the land back to the South, white people of the South, and then the government came out with this idea called the Homestead Act.
Right. So that would apply to migrants too. So they redistribute the land that they had conquered, or, winner takes the spoils. So now the losers, the South, no harm done, no foul. So they gave the land back to them, and any migrants could also get in on this deal. This is what is known as, what is it, the Homestead Act?
Yes. So the Homestead Act, the way that worked is the government issued out 246 million acres of land to 1.5 million white families. And that just does not disclose itself to the Southerners, but like he said, immigrants, white immigrants that migrated to America. So you could literally come here with nothing on your back, get a piece of land. And the way the Homestead Act worked was if you got a piece of land, you would stay on that land for 5 years. And that would roughly equate to $1 million per family. And with that $1 million per family, if you stay on the land for 5 years, you be naturalized or become a citizen of America.
Wow.
So that's how the Homestead Act worked. It was a way of expanding the country west, but also, allowing people to come here with literally nothing but the clothes on their back, gain $1 million for their family, and a citizenship.
And flourish. That's a hell of a spot. And again, the 40 acres and a mule that was promised to the black people was denied. That never happened. So this, again, 246 million acres.
Which equates to 1.6 trillion. So instead of giving black slaves $1 trillion, 2% of reparations back, they decided to give it back to the South and any white immigrant families who migrated to the land the ability to flourish and start anew and expand the country.
So that's the first step in helping migrants stand up and get, a starter kit, able to, grow, come to America, the American dream, be able to live the American dream. Now, this is the first step.
And keep in mind, this is what's crazy about it. Roughly 93 million white American families today directly benefited from the Homestead Act. Meaning your great-grandfather, your father's dad, your mom's dad, like direct lineage. I'm not talking about cousins, second cousins removed. No. The bloodline from son, dad, grandfather, great-grandfather. 93 million white American families are direct beneficiaries of the Homestead Act.
This is inherited wealth. Down through generation, passed through generation. Now, keep in mind, the slaves or the black folks still don't have, as they say, a pot nor a window to throw it out of.
Nope. So the Homestead Act happened. But let's talk about the impacts of the Civil War and how that impacted the South directly, but not solely the South, but the whole world. The cotton industry. Oh, yeah. You want to go ahead?
No, go ahead. That's crazy. What those numbers. Yeah. And
the cotton industry. All right. So 60% of the U.S.'s export was cotton, meaning out of all the exports we gave, whether it was oil, silk, harvest, cotton was 60% of our exports. However, the U.S. produced 80% of the global's cotton export. So just the cotton industry solely, out of 100% of the cotton industry in the world, 80% of that came from the U.S. So you can imagine the famine and the excruciating pain that caused the world when the slaves were freed.
Oh yeah, they were like, what we gonna do now? I mean, the cotton market was like oil in today's time. It was like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? What is it? What is America up to now?
And what was crazy about that is that roughly 20 million people around the world worked in the cotton industry. 1 million people lost their jobs immediately due to the Confederacy losing the war. Immediately. And that was 50% of the South's value were the slaves and cotton. 50%.
So what is America going to do to put their people back to work? That's the cry from around the world. What are we going to do? What are they going to do?
So we've kind of graduated from this idea of slavery, right? Abe Lincoln ended it. There's no more slavery. So we should be able to fix ourselves or make something happen. But as my dad said, the world was crying for an answer. So this is what led to the Jim Crow Act. The Jim Crow Act was a solution to the cotton famine. And not solely that, but to also help with maintaining African Americans to still work for free.
But what's the problem? I mean, you guys are free. You know, we're setting you up to go to work. But the Jim Crow Act literally was a system of laws and customs reinforced with extreme violence, designated to reinstate 100% tax on sharecroppers' labor.
So we're talking about this 100% tax again.
Oh my gosh.
100% tax, that's slavery. Sharecroppers weren't slaves, were they?
No, they weren't technically, but again, the Jim Crow law, as we go through here, I'll let you, the listening audience, determine if that was still, a form of slavery or if it was 100% tax, or just what the bottom line was, because the numbers don't lie.
So the way the Jim Crow Act worked was plenty of white farmers or planters, depending on how you want to use the term, had land, right? The Homestead Act was given back to a lot of Southern or white farmers, but they had land and needed someone to work. You know what I'm saying? Like, land doesn't work without labor. It can't happen. So the Jim Crow Act offered the job of sharecropping. And the way the sharecropping worked was you would get land and you would be provided the tools, the seeds, any other expenses that you needed to help grow crops upon this land.
Keep in mind, the terms and conditions were set by the white landowners.
So they got to set your profit and your expenses. And if your expenses and your profit were at zero and you broke even, that was a great year. But 9 times out of 10, your expenses succeeded past your profits.
But the catch is, crops don't come in for a full year. So you got to work. It don't come in tomorrow or, the next day or the next month. Crops are a full year of labor and harvesting and bringing in the crops. And you got to, so who's going to carry you on your food and shelter? The landowner is carrying you, the sharecropper, which in this case is the black man. Again, he's owed, or he's indebted to the landowner for his shelter, his food. He's fronting him. He's spotting him, or he's loaning him this resources in order to survive for that full year. Your heat in the homes, your water, your transportation, all that, you got to pay that back. That's not free.
And keep in mind, the land wasn't abundant either. The land there was nothing out there. So there was nothing for you to at least have to start off with. No, you were starting at ground zero, meaning you had to start the harvest.
Dude, a little story, just not to get too far off track, but I am a descendant of sharecroppers. I was the last generation born in Thomasville, Georgia, aka even smaller than that, Metcalf, Georgia. So again, the city is Thomasville, Georgia, that you claim, because that they got paved streets and lights, so you claim that. But really, you from Metcalf, Georgia, which has dirt roads the whole nine. These are small farms off the Blick plantation, David up from the big plantation that they're speaking of. So as a kid, I was the last generation. My grandfather, in my grandfather's home, that I was born the last one on this land out of all the grandkids, so to speak. So, I was there until a little shorty, elementary school. I'm running around having a good time. I'm, running through the watermelon fields, these strawberries, these pecan trees. I'm thinking all this is ours, dude. I'm having a great time. My cousins from Florida would come up and visit, and they would have a good time. They come up for the summer, You know, everybody goes to their grandma for summer, right? So they would come up from Florida for the summer. And, you know, I would just show out. I just have them ripping and running all through the streams, all this. Because this is our land. We live in large, right? I just know this is our stuff, you know. But his three sons, my grandfather had three sons that were still there, and they would harvest the land, you know, drive the tractors, pick the farm. You know, I just thought this was the way of life. We got it like that. We got this big farm. We doing it. So tragically, however, my grandfather was fishing. You know, you go out and fish, you know, on your boat. So you put a line in the water, and then you go to the other side and you drop another line. So this line drifted out into the water. And I know he's done it 1,000 times. Just went out into the pond, got his pole, and got back on the boat. Well, this time he didn't make it back onto the boat. So, long story short, because the head of the household, this sharecropper, was no longer available to man the house and to continue to do this sharecropping labor, to continue to do the labor, head of household, do you know we had to literally pack up and move to where we had migrated down to Florida? The other family, my moms, my aunts, my cousins, had all migrated to Florida. That was why, and it took me years. It was years later that I figured out why we had to leave when my grandfather passed away, that we were literally sharecroppers. So when you see us or hear us do these episodes, man, we are doing it from where we come from. We're not going to ask you to do anything we don't know about or haven't done, man. You know, this is real stuff. This is real talk.
Yeah, man. And you know, and that's how the contracts were. They would literally, if you can provide, they would give your contract to someone else who could do it, and then you still had to pay on the contract. And so, you know, thinking today in terms of contracts, I'm not signing that contract, right? Well, they had a law for that under Jim Crow called the vagrancy laws. And you could be put in the state or county jails if you did not pay, you know, on that contract. If you did not provide or pay or continue to work service, even though they gave your contract to someone else, you would get put in state or county jail. So, okay, we smart. We're going to outsmart the system, right? All right, so I'm going to sign the contract, but I'm not going to do nothing. Well, they have a law for that called the contract enforcement laws, meaning if you break the contract that you signed, you will be placed in the state or county jail. So now you're damned if you don't sign the contract, and you're damned if you do sign the contract. So you like, all right, they put me in the county jail or the state jail, but that's cool. Now I really don't got to do nothing, and I get to eat 3 square meals a day. If Jim Crow don't do it again, they have a law for that called convict leasing. And the thing about convict leasing is that they could literally take you and rent you back out to the same farmer or planter you were not trying to work for, or a corporation you weren't trying to work for, and they could rent you and sell you there, and you would have to work there for free. And the mortality rate on that was 50%. So you are 50% gonna live or die. And the reason this is so sickening and so sad is because if you were a slave, yeah, a slave owner would beat you near to death, or, you know, if they had to kill you, they would have to kill you. But really, they would rather keep you around for 10, 15, 20 years to keep your work, your servitude. They don't want to waste their money and, you know, just have you dead. Now that's a wasted asset. But here, under the convict leasing law, they don't care about you. They only want you for like 6 to 24 months, which is 2 years. And, you know, if you come up dead, you come up dead. It's whatever. But you either going to work for free or you just going to die. So you pick your poison.
And because of that law, that particular portion of the law, the convict leasing, the deaths went up 50% death rates, man. Because as he stated, we could just lynch you after we were finished with you. Uh, you, it. Trust me, what the guy said.
He said this lasted for 75 years. So the Homestead Act went from 1865 to roughly 1870 during that time when they came up with the Jim Crow Act. Jim Crow went from 1870 to 1945. So for 75 years, there were roughly 4,000 lynchings recorded, keyword recorded, that we know of, meaning for 75 years, someone was lynched once a week.
And dudes say, trust me, you will get the hint. Yo, everybody in that community, everybody in that state,
your neighbors, your aunts, your uncles, your cousins, your brother, your sister, y'all will understand and get that hint.
And conform, basically, is what it's saying, because those are the conditions that you are up against. So, continue on, son.
So, the sick thing about this was, for example, Alabama, the state of Alabama utilized the convict leasing as a lucrative way to make profit. Out of 100% of their profit, 20% came from convict leasing, meaning free labor.
And you see them in the movies, or I can attest to that. You see what they call a chain gang.
Yeah, the movie Life, right?
The striped suits and all that, just harvesting, just working, just free labor, man. Really?
And so bringing some numbers back to perspective, when Abe Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation and freed those 4 million slaves, the South lost about $22 trillion. $22 trillion. However, during the time of the Jim Crow Act, they made back $15 trillion off the descendants of slaves. So you telling me Jim Crow made 70% of what they lost without naming it slavery, but by enforcing the Jim Crow laws. And that's why they call this slavery by another name.
So hold up. You telling me that slavery, those are the numbers separating me from being enslaved for however many years. What was that? Something like 250 years, 150 years. So I was enslaved literally as not being a human, and just that's all I was. I was somebody else's property. But after emancipation, I'm putting up the same money and value, and I'm free.
Right. And I was born into freedom. I wasn't born a slave. You got to keep in mind, those are descendants too.
Oh my goodness. These are the kids, the children now are still making and going through the obstacles and going through the hurdles and going through the bloodshed.
Mm-hmm. And you got to keep in mind, a lot of people are like, okay, so the other $7 trillion, where did that go? Well, think about it. 4,000 lynchings happened, and those were the ones recorded. So how many were unrecorded? Okay, so you have those Black people whose deaths are roaming around. Then, Emancipation Proclamation, some free slaves may have ran north to the Union, got away.
No doubt. That's me. I'm out.
I'm out of here, man. So, yeah, you got that to equate into the system. And then, like I said, when they divvied back some of the land back to these white planters and farmers, these white planters and farmers couldn't afford to own slaves. It was cheaper to rent sharecroppers. So instead of owning your own slaves and multiple of them, you can only rent about maybe 1 to 2 per farmer and planter. So the efficiency and the effectiveness went down immensely because you have all this land, but not enough people to work on it. So that's where the other $7 trillion kind of evaporated.
So let me understand this. This is another hurdle or another we shall overcome moment.
Mm.
And again, look like there's an ocean gap between me and white America. How am I to get wealth or be able to sustain any kind of lifestyle or progress in any way in America? And we up to what year is it?
Well, this is between 1870 and 1945.
In 1945, dude, are you serious? So that's not a long time ago. Most of our grandparents, or my dad, your grandparent, my dad was born in 1937, my dad and mom's. So they in here.
And also you got to keep in mind that World War II ended in 1945. So you had 2 world wars also involved in that we fought in as well.
Exactly.
So.
And we still came home to this.
Mm-hmm.
So, when people say, oh, everybody migrated to America, everybody, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. And, as the gentleman said, $1 million is a hell of a bootstrap.
Right. If you get to come to a new land and you start with $1 million for your family and land and get citizenship, I don't even think Black people who lived here, who were brought over here, who was born into this country, even got citizenship.
Oh, absolutely not.
Ain't no slaves got no citizenship and no land. And Europeans can come over, get $1 million and some land. That's a pretty dope head start to me.
And I think that leads us into the next part about, coming to Ellis Island, coming in that way in New York, and how their education, if you would.
Right. So now kind of going to the next part. All right, Lamar, slavery happened, but y'all made it through. Jim Crow law, I knew it happened. I didn't know it was that long. I thought it was only maybe 3 to maybe even the most 10 years. I didn't know it was decades. But hey, man, that was a tough time, but y'all made it through. And a lot of y'all went to school. W.E. Du Bois was a very well-educated man.
Granddaddy, we got Granddaddy. He worked hard. He did some things.
Right. You guys had education. Well, let's elaborate on that, shall we? So the way education came about in the South is a lot of the white planters and farmers wanted to expand, but to do so, you also have to expand with the slaves or the sharecroppers and the Black people in the South. So what they did was they began to create schools for Black people under the separate but equal idea.
But this is called human capital development. So we're going into, modern times now. We're trying to up the game. America is trying to up its game.
Yep. So we're expanding. And so education is called the great equalizer. And you would think it would equalize the playing field for Black people, right?
You would think. So go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
So, there was a time period, New York, for instance, that was where a lot of people from Europe came in, what is the Statue of Liberty out there in the Ellis Island?
Right, Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island.
When they saw that, they had arrived. America, the home of the free, that whole slogan, I can go now and understand these immigrants are, leaving, escaping from bad situations. We all get that, we all understand that to the nth degree. No one is disputing that. And America, when you see that Statue of Liberty out there on Ellis Island, you have arrived. You know, opportunity is wide open. That's what that symbolizes. But according to Lamar, that didn't apply to Black America or African America or, you know, all the other names we have, you know, gone through stages of identification. So
for example, we're going to give you a couple numbers. So throughout the South, the entire South, 64 public schools were created for African Americans. Not 64 in the county, not 64 in the state, but through the entire South. And know what the entire South was. It was from Maryland, Virginia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, all of those, Mississippi, and only 64 public schools were made. With that 64 public schools being made, the ratio was usually one Black teacher to every 1,000 Black students. I know a lot of us go to college and we, you know, one of the biggest things we look for is, okay, well, what's the student-teacher ratio? See, a lot of people don't learn well in lecture halls. A lot of people want that, you know, that relationship, that direct contact. You know, in public schools, you want only 20 to 30 people in the class that you can relate. And so that was most of the K-12 schools that were built by Black people and Black-owned.
But this guy, you know, the president of General Education Board, which is equivalent to, you know, our education, what is the Department of Education in this day and age, his quote was, "The South needed Negroes educated so that they could be the best possible laborers. With the right kind of education, Negroes would be willingly work for menial jobs and open up opportunities for Southern whites to work the more expert labor and jobs." So
it was almost like he was developing them.
It was designed.
Right.
This systemic, again, is not by mistake, man. This is by design.
And Siron, being the psychologist that she is, she talks about how, you know, schooling at a young age is very important for developmental. This is the stage where you soak everything up as a sponge. So if you're growing up from birth all the way through middle school, high school, and all you know is you can only work as a janitor or any other menial job, you come up thinking that way. And that's how generations and other things kind of rotated through, because those people, those students became Black teachers who then taught the next generation that same mindset, that same thought process. So now this is just cycling over and over generationally. Man.
So here we are, man. We are, as you stated, this is the 1900, and this is where we, you know, again, stepping up our game. And, you know, during that time period in the 1920s, the population was in New York City, as you know it today, wasn't the case. New York City was entirely white.
Diverse, yep. Not as diverse.
97%. 50 times more was spent on education in New York than South Carolina, right? Even though Blacks were 51.4% of the state's population.
Mm-hmm.
So the immigrants who came to New York have 50 times more invested in their education than Black students in the South.
Who were born here. Keep that in mind as well.
And as you stated, in the South, for every dollar invested to educate a Black student, $5 to $8 were invested to educate a white child. And I think the guys say, you do the math. One's going to be a porter and one's going to go to Harvard.
Right. One's going to be a pauper, one's going to go to Harvard. And what a pauper is, it's just a poor person. That's literally what a pauper is. It's just a poor person.
Black teachers in the South were paid only 25 to 34% what white teachers were paid, and white students received 50% more years of education than blacks by the age of 25.
So, for example, a white teacher will earn $1. A black teacher will earn a quarter. That was the salary wage gap on that. That's what teachers were being paid.
Oh my
Black
gosh.
teacher versus a white teacher. A white teacher is making $1 versus a black teacher making 25 cents. So how do I strap myself up, or how do I come up by my bootstraps or work hard when I'm already at a disadvantage and then still given less advantages?
And that's what they're stating, that, researchers say that had they just did this much,
The wage gap to 50% would be closed.
keep your discrimination, keep your whatever, keep your hate for me, but just play fair on the education, the gap would have been closed
50%.
50%.
So we could still live by separate but equal. But if the education, the investment, resources were all the same, the wage gap will be 50% closer.
Unbelievable.
And like I said, that cycle, like I said, Siron was on here. That's a devastating thing to a child, is to have them believe something during the developmental stage, have them think in one way. So when they become adults.
Yeah, it's ugly. Very ugly, man. Very ugly.
This really all happened during that time. And one of the biggest things that I kind of want to touch on now and kind of close out is the idea of home ownership, right? We would think, okay, they can build some wealth, at least they can get a home. That's the greatest credit builder, wealth builder there is, correct, Hardy?
Yeah, that's it there. For as far as the little people or any American, that's the first big item that creates your sense of purpose, and you feel a part of the American dream, is to be a homeowner.
So
They didn't have something for that, did they?
Come on, man. We've been on this already. They got something for everything.
So wait. What was it? So I went through slavery.
Mm-hmm.
I went through Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
My education is short. What is it but equal? Separate but equal. So how am I still here? I mean, come on. I'm still standing. And you're telling me now I have, all these are this is the American way. I mean, every stage or every phase of this is how you survive and how America was built, literally. How America came to be, literally. Slavery, Jim Crow, education. And now I'm still struggling. I'm still trying to create some value in myself, for my family, for my community. So home ownership has got to be the way to go.
Well, like I said, the world wars have happened. Jim Crow is currently going on. So between 1930s and the 1960s, the government provided $120 billion worth of subsidies to homeowners. So that equates to about $1 trillion today. All I have to say is less than 2% of that went to Black American families, while 20 plus million Europeans who migrated benefited directly off of this, off the subsidies. So you're telling me I've lived here, I was born here, and I only get 2% of the subsidies, whereas people who are escaping, due to religious freedoms or, different beliefs or new opportunities, they come here and get directly benefited because they're white Europeans. And so you're like, okay, so these subsidies are out there and the government are providing them. I'm a Black young man with a family, and I would like to get home to help build my wealth and my credit. I'm going to go ask the federal housing administrators. Refuse to do it. Okay, financial institutes and banks ask for a loan. They refuse to give Black people loans. And while we're on the loans with banks and home ownership, I'd advise you guys to check out the movie The Banker with Nia Long in it. It was really good on Apple TV. You might be able to find it elsewhere.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Yep, that was just a ploy, kind of slide that in there while we're on the topic. So go check that out. Home developers, real estate agents, and other residents. I'm trying to get in on this $120 billion subsidies, and I can only get 2%, and I need it. I'm from here, and I can't get in on it. And you're telling me that by the end of this period, 1960, less than 1% had mortgages. Black Americans, less than 1% had mortgages in the entire United States nation. Out of all the mortgages in the country, less than 1% belong to Black Americans.
So where do you go? You are forced into what we call ghettos?
Right. So I'm gonna tell you how the ghettos kind of came about.
Okay.
And ghettos, the term ghetto is defined as involuntary living, meaning I didn't choose to live here. I was forced to live here, involuntary. And that's due to redlining, but it's also due to contract sales. So the way these contract sales will work, for example, say you have 100 installment plans, a 100 installment payment plan. You make 99 payments on this house, including the down payment, but you miss the 100th. The landowner has the right to keep all your payments, all 99 plus the down payment. They have the right to evict you. They have the right to sell it to someone else. And you, as the person paying for the house, have to keep the maintenance and the upkeep of the house until the house is handed off. That whole time.
Crazy.
How are you supposed to do that if you just kick me out the house, you keep all my money, I'm already working menial jobs, I don't have a top-notch education, and then on top of that, I got to keep the maintenance of this house for someone else coming into it. So then what the white people started doing is they begin to sweep or push people to a particular area. And this is kind of called redlining, where you redesign and draw lines on the district. And, for example, there's the hood parts of DC, and then there's the gentrified or the, safer, I guess, terminology parts of DC that people live in. So some parts, they would be pushed to the ghetto. And like I said, the ghetto is used as involuntary living.
And of course, the price or these ghettos, for the most part, only have rental property. So we all know those prices in the poor Black communities were 50% higher or more versus outside of them. And, what do you do?
And, people are like, oh, you got to work harder, try harder, pull yourself up. But how can you do that during this period? And with that being said, white American families were 11 times more prosperous, wealthier than Black American families born in this period.
So let me recount again. So you're telling me I came from slavery?
Mm-hmm.
What was it?
Homestead Act. And
Homestead Act. Fought in the Civil War, right? Homestead Act. The Civil War ended, so I'm getting ready to blow up now. That was the Emancipation Proclamation, right?
Yep.
I'm getting ready to take off now.
Mm-hmm.
And Jim Crow was after that?
Yes, sir.
And my education, separate but equal. I don't know how that go together. Separate but equal. And now you're telling me the one good thing that America thrives on as far as accumulating wealth and ownership and going forward and making a better life for you and your kids and your family and the generations to follow, I'm again being denied an opportunity?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
So, kind of wrapping up on, the Black tax, this is what we talk about. And this is our answer to when people want to bring up, oh, America wasn't built only on the backs of Black people. My great grandfather came here with nothing. He was poor and he made something of himself. You had the right to education just as we did. You just didn't work hard enough. You didn't work to strive to get a better job. This is my analogy. With all these things in place, let's say we're at a NASCAR race. White people are at the starting line, and then you got 25 cars in this race. Black people are the 25th car. And the reason I say that is because you have all these immigrants who migrated to America who may not have started at the starting line, but receive more benefits, more advantages than the Black people who were born in the country. And then, okay, we want to talk about, every country had slavery. America wasn't the first one to invent slavery, but slavery happened within their own country. People ran and migrated from their own country. Black people were picked up and stolen and brought to another country. So don't tell me that, everyone started at the bottom. We were at a disadvantage from the beginning and still at a disadvantage even being here before others. And that's my idea that's why I brought this episode together of don't be blinded. Don't allow all this other stuff around you and the things going on in life right now and where we see. My favorite thing to hear is when people are like, oh, well, how did Oprah make it? How did Tyler Perry make it? How did all these professional athletes and stuff make millions of dollars and we voted for Obama? But my answer is, if we started on the same platform, equal playing fields, how many more of us would be the Oprahs? How many more Obamas would there be? You know what I'm saying, Hardy? Like, how many more of those diamonds in the rough would be there.
And the numbers show that the patents and the inventions, and it's a disservice to America. It's not that we lose out as a people. America suffers, and that was a loss for them as well, because the patents and the inventions, we were in on that, whether people believe it or even know that. Again, research, do your homework, study, read. But we were in on that, and against all odds, we were still able to contribute to the greatness of this country, man. So imagine if we, like you said, started on an even playing field, and we've just gone through a litany of obstacles and reasons why, and had it's a disservice to the country. It's not just us as a people, but we lose out as a whole, as a country. That's the big picture here. It wasn't just us. The country lost. The country is not where it could be or should be. And that's the point we're trying to make as well. You're not so to stand back and say it's just us and then we whining and we want handouts. Dude, we could, if we all did it together, we could be light years ahead. That's the point we're trying to make here. We're all in this together.
Definitely. And, going back to my NASCAR analogy, and he pretty much summed it up, but say if we're in this race and I'm at the 25th spot and I move and pass cars and I make it up, and I finally make it up to where, white people are.
The first car?
The first car. I still got to now go catch the first car, who probably has a separation on the rest of the pack, and then, try to even out with him. And then on top of that, what is his pit crew like? His pit crew has all the best resources, has all the best gear, has the best networking. I'm over here using a jack and a crank trying to lift my car up on all fours, and he over here drilling, getting out in 10 seconds. He back on the road. I'm still over here trying to get one tire off at my pit stop. And that's just an analogy, but that's what I'm saying. These are the things he's talking about. If we had started on the equal playing field, there would be such a greater service to the world.
And trust and believe, this is not a black and white issue or complaint. This is not black man against white man. No, by no means. This is America. That's what this is. This is America. And all we're doing is identifying one plaque or one dimension of America, or one circumstance of America compared to the other. So please don't walk away from this thinking, oh, they black against white. No, that's not what this is about. This is about America. And we're just trying to put some context and some thought-provoking conversation out there for us to understand and for us to go forward and just, have the conversation. That's what this is about.
Definitely. And, kind of just touching on a couple of other things that you notice that is around in the country. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the 30 for 30 documentary Water on ESPN, but the idea of how Chinese people came to America and saw the divide between black and white people, and how their conformity awarded them so much. If you look around in any big metropolis city in any state, there is a Chinatown somewhere in the corner. There's a little Italy somewhere in New England, whether it's New York, Philly, even up in Boston. But Do you see any, I don't know, what do you want to say, little Africa soul food shops everywhere? You don't see none of those. You can't find those. Like everyone else benefited, everyone else got something from America, yet we were here and still haven't received the just due that we are looking for and asking for. And that's what this episode was about. It was a educational perspective, meaning, look at everything and make sure you understand everything that's going on. Don't just rely on what white America's history books tell you. I've always said it to this day. Me growing up as a black man in America, I had to know my history and America's history. And I said this last episode, white Americans don't have to have that. They don't need that. Why? They would never understand why that is reasonable. Why is that a necessity? There's no need to have that in my arsenal, my two belts to learn about black history. It has no relation to me. And so that's why we come on this podcast and do this. And I want people to hear this and listen to this and reach back out to us on social media and comment on the website and the podcast and let us know what you think and bring something forward to the table that we can educate ourselves about and learn about so we can talk about it later. Because that's all this is to bring conversation up and address the issues of today.
True. That's what it's about.
But before we close, I kind of want to do a little what's up with you, as we always do. Lately, I know a lot of schools have been doing Black at insert whatever university you are. My school is definitely doing that right now, Black at Bentley. And I graduated class of 2017, the Centennial class, so I'm better than all the other classes out there. So I'm definitely going to give myself a round of applause on that. Thank you. But no, all jokes aside, we've been doing a lot of conversations. Alumni from 1980 to 2020 have come together on what ways we can change the atmosphere at our school, Bentley, up in Boston. And for me personally, it's been great because I've always had a bittersweet love-hate relationship with my school, meaning I was so proud and I love the fact that I graduated from such a prestigious school and I was afforded the opportunity for a great education at Bentley University, but I just didn't, outside of that, I just didn't feel, the love or appreciation up there. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the people of color that went to my school were pretty much from up there, whether it was Boston, Maine, Connecticut. They could go home on the weekends. If they got sick and tired of dealing with the prejudice and the biasness at the schools, they could go back home into their communities and feel back at home and feel safe. I didn't have that luxury. I was 8.5, 9 hours away, and I was stuck up there, and I had to stay in it. And I was involved in pretty much everything, all the Black clubs, football team, the sports, athletics, the student life and affairs. I was pretty much in everything. And one thing that stuck out to me is this facade that Bentley portrays of diversity. And my 4 years there, I learned that diversity does not mean Black people. Diversity, according to Webster, is anybody who is not a white male. That is diversity. So that includes all ethnicities that are not white. White women count as minority because they're not white males. So that was diversity. And they were portraying diversity as, we have different ethnic groups, but they didn't have too many ethnic groups. They only had international students. I talk about it all the time. There might have been 100 Black students out of 4,500 students at the school. And out of that 100, Black students, maybe 10 to 15 African American students. The other 100 Blacks were Haitian, Jamaican, some sort of Caribbean, West Indies, from Africa, or even London or France, whatever, those kind of Africans. But none were straight descendants from slaves. Like I said, maybe 10 to 15. And right now, one of the biggest things we're trying to incorporate is closing the gaps within minorities. And what's sad about that is we're trying to close the gaps within minorities, not between the ratio at the school, but minorities, meaning all the other ethnic groups are at 7 to 8%. Black students at that school are 3% of the population. So you're telling me Asians, Middle Easterns, Hispanics, all of them are at 7 to 8% of the school. Black people as a whole are 3% of the school's population, and we're not even at the 7 8%. So that's just something I wanted to leave you guys with. That's something that my school has been, well, my alumni, we've been talking about and discussing with one another during these times. Hardy Boy, you got anything else you'd like to add to this?
So yes, these are the conversations that we have to have. And as you stated, diversity doesn't necessarily mean black. So someone brought it to the forefront that, oh, you see, I'm going to donate to the diversity, or I'm going to, contribute here, thinking that they were given to a HBCU or black ownership or black store. But the caveat was just diversity. So this is another smoke and mirror that is being used by the system. Again, the conversation is still about systemic racism, sexism, all the isms, right? So this is just another smoke screen. When you see diversity, we automatically think black. That's not the case, as he stated. There's everybody who's somebody is all comes under that heading. So you, again, a couple of episodes ago, we said, oh, when I Google, I want to get my hair done or how to cook black eyed peas, I got to put the black way. For black people. I got to put that extra on there. So again, this is one of those instances where when you see diversity, or I want to donate to, you better say black this, black that, because just thinking by Googling diversity and that's where your money or that's where your time or that's where your energy is going to black people, that's not necessarily the case. So again, this was a good episode, and I really appreciate the conversation. And as you stated, we got to do more of this.
Yes, sir. And I would just like to thank you all for tuning in, for listening this far. If you made it this far, I know this was a longer episode than most, but we felt that we could no longer really spoon feed, but we needed to actually take a time out and educate as best we can. Please go check out Shawn Rochester on YouTube, called The Black Tax, The Cost of Being Black in America. It's a great presentation he has. He has about 2 or 3 of them up. They're about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And I know those are long, but they're really good. The last 30 minutes or hours are usually Q&A, so it's really an hour. And you guys just really listen and understand what he's saying. And like I said before, if you guys have any other links, people, any other forms of education that you guys would like us to touch upon or talk about, don't be afraid to DM me, Siron, the Two Fingers page, Gary Hardy on his Facebook. Just reach out to us, and we would love to elaborate on the conversation and keep it going. And with that, the gym we always go out on. God, please grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And with that,
2 fingers, peace and love.
2 fingers, 2 up, 2 down. 2 fingers, deuces. We out.
How much longer will this linger? Stacking problems like Jenga. Issues pierce life with stingers. And I'm out. 2 fingers.